So finally, what this class is actually working towards, and that is an introduction to calculus. This is 10.1. We're going to do a mini unit on just some intro to calc with some lessons here. But first of all, I just want to talk about one of the two problems that calculus addresses. One of those problems is the problem of tangent lines, and we'll get to what that means here on the next piece of paper. But to develop this idea, I want to mention about just thinking about how you would drive in the car. So let's say that you drove 130 miles in 2 hours on the interstate. What would your average speed be? Well, I think a lot of you could answer that pretty easily. You would just say, well, it's 130 miles, took 2 hours, so that's going to be 65 miles per hour. Okay, and so that's going to be your average speed if you have gone 130 miles in 2 hours. But does that mean that you drove exactly that speed the entire time? I would venture to say no, unless you were on a super straight piece of highway and you just had the cruise control on. I would say no. You probably were going back and forth a little bit, especially if you weren't using cruise control. It's pretty hard to keep your speed exactly the same the whole time. There might be wind and all that kind of stuff. So for that reason, we have this thing that we're going to call instantaneous speed. And that is the speed at any one given moment. If you take a snapshot for just a split second in time, what is your speed at that moment? That is instantaneous speed, and that's a question that is a very common question in calculus. Now, as far as interpreting that with graphs and things other than maybe just speed, is something we call a tangent line. The tangent line of a function, notice I've got this function here. Here's some function, and I have a tangent line. Now, a tangent line, just to remind you, is a line that touches at exactly one spot at a particular point on that function. So in this case, it's intersecting at the point 1, 1. So that is the instantaneous slope. I'm looking at the slope of that line at that single point. This is called a point of tangency. It's on a tangent line. This is really the same speed. This is the same, thing as instantaneous speed, instantaneous slope. It is something that we're going to be calling in calculus the derivative. That's a word that if you're in calculus next year, you're going to hear an awful lot.